listen to today's topic once again. Let your voice convey higher consciousness. And the reading for today, January 11th, is listen to the subtle undertones in your voice. Ask yourself why people's voices express so much variety. Probably you already know, everyone has a unique voice, different voice. And that is very interesting because Swamiji says in the next line, the mechanism of speech never changes. One might expect its tones to be as alike as trumpets, yet each voice has intonations that are uniquely its own. An American once, at the airport in Patna, India, recognized me solely by my voice. He hadn't seen me for 15 years, when I had been a stranger in high school. He had no idea that I was even in India. Listen therefore to your own voice. Try to expunge from it any qualities you don't like. Sweeten it with kindness, brighten it with interest, soften it by heartfelt respect for others, warm it with consideration for their needs. And the next one is also very much related to this, so I'll read it. This is for tomorrow. To inject warmth in your voice, relax it physically. Then project interest and your concern for others' well-being outward to them. Let your voice rise from the heart, flow smoothly through the vocal cords, never tensely as if forcing itself through fierce opposition. Then outward through your spiritual eye at a point midway between the eyebrows. So it's a very beautiful topic, this, how to use our voice to raise our consciousness. And I'm reminded of a few stories which I'd like to start with. Then also if you have any questions towards the end of this discussion, please do send them and I'll be happy to try to answer those questions. So the story that first of all comes to my mind, this is very interesting, that in the last 5 days, 4 or 5 days, I was trying to battle a cough. It was how it happens, it started this time in the throat. And each day by evening time it would come forward and by next day, it would be totally fine as if it was not there. And yesterday we all went to a friend's place for a kirtan and I had requested everybody to sing one chant each. But at a certain point, the harmonium came back to me and there was a request. So I chanted again, and just by the end of that chant, I knew that I had, my throat was strained, and sure enough, in the night, nature took advantage of it. And I was thinking this morning, how ironic that here I'm going to speak of the tone of the voice which expresses our consciousness, and my own tone probably won't be exactly the way it normally is. And I don't know if you can pick it up on the mic, but I'm speaking a little bit from a slightly blocked nose. But on the other hand, friends, that does make a difference. But as Kriyanandaji will share in his teachings, on the other hand, it has a minor effect, one might say. I remember this was in 2009. Kriyanandaji was in the ashram outside of Pune in Vatunde. And he was beginning to record the first series of his Bhagavad Gita interpretations in video, and I just happened to reach from the back side of the house, from the kitchen. I thought I'll find a place in the room from the back side. Swamiji had invited us to listen to the recordings, and just as I entered, sure enough, he came into the living room from his room, and he looked at me. He says, he was probably discussing with, I think, Brian or someone who could do the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. And I just walked in at that time. He says, oh, maybe Aditya can do this recording. And I said, what is this, Swami? He says, he had the page in his hand. He says, this is the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Brian wants me to say a few lines. Why don't you say the other half? It'll be nice to have an Indian voice in there. And that time too, I was going through a very severe, actually at that time my voice was much more changed. And I said to him immediately, I said, sir, I'm having a very bad throat. And he didn't even look at me, he just said, oh, that doesn't matter. And I thought, okay, it doesn't matter. And after I think 2-3 takes, the recording was done and it came out beautifully. Of course, you can imagine recording it side by side, sitting next to him. Initially I was nervous. But then it was so joyful because when he spoke, it just made me forget my illness, any limitations. I had not done, I think, any recording for Ananda till that time. But he had so much confidence that his magnetism was infectious, and I felt up for the task. So, but then Kriyanandaji said, now I was saying his consciousness affected maybe my voice. It happens many times. But it also works the other way around, which is the topic of our discussion chiefly. How can we use our voice to change our consciousness? And for somebody who may be new to our videos, I want to discuss this very key word, consciousness. What is consciousness? That we speak of it so commonly, that, especially Kriyanandaji in his book, Awaken to Super Consciousness, which by the way is a wonderful book to understand this very central concept of the spiritual path. He says, ultimately, consciousness alone exists. And he says that people today think, oh, my thoughts are producing that word consciousness. Well, we've given it a word consciousness, like we've given word God or Divine Mother or the Father to express different aspects of divinity which we are aspiring for or which do exist. But he said that the word consciousness is explaining a state of awareness which we all have actually come from. We all means our very body, which is to say matter, the energy which now scientists have found when you explode one atom, it produces nuclear energy. Yoganandaji says the same energy, that is, you might say, an outward manifestation of light. It can be blinding. He says the same can be experienced in our inner realities. At this point, the spiritual eye, it says that light can be seen, energy can be unleashed. That energy in our body, in our astral body, energy body, is contained in the form of Kundalini energy. And I was very fascinated. Recently, I learned through one of our teachers that the Kundalini exists actually outside of the physical body's, you might say, limits. It is beneath the spine. And I'm also a doctor, so I would often, whenever people describe these things, I would relate them to the physical position. And they say, no, it's slightly outside. And that energy is part of course, you may have heard of chakras, Ida, Pingla, Sushumna, Nadi. So those are parts of the energy manifestation. So consciousness takes care of the physical body, the energy body behind it, which, by the way, is a very universal experience in many different religions. Today it's not the topic for our discussion, but it is a reality where people have experienced it. And even a subtler reality than that is said to be thoughts. And Yoganandaji said, you and I, depending on our state of awareness, alertness, consciousness, we are able to perceive those thoughts, and in order to explain, you might say, in order for the consciousness to express itself, we use certain gestures, we use certain words, and it's a very fascinating thing, because now it may have made no sense to you so far, but the real promise behind these teachings is that they express that the body is not an end in itself. Otherwise, what hope is there for us in this short span of 80 to 100 years, 120 if you live very, very well? What hope? I mean, after that, the form has to perish. It is actually, you might say, adding and shedding itself by the moment. So these teachings give us that reality. So consciousness, Yoganandaji said, produces these realities. And like I said in the beginning, our body, our energy, our thoughts can affect our consciousness. And today we will see how the voice affects our consciousness. Again, I am finding this so interesting on the spiritual path, especially as laid out by Paramhans Yoganandaji, that he can pick one aspect of our lives which may be most important. For example, if you are a singer, or if you're a teacher, or if you happen to be a counselor, you will see that he has picked up the topic of voice and he makes it a beautiful tool for you. And not just meditation and yoga, which are extremely central too. So voice now expresses, has the potential to express different consciousness. Now I want to pick up the state of consciousness, super consciousness especially, which is the higher state. Then right now you and I are in a state of the conscious state. We can reason out things, question answers, and then when we sleep we go into a state of subconsciousness. Paramhans Yoganandaji said that the superconscious state, one of its qualities is it always has a solution. to any problem of life. And I want to pick two examples of how, when you approach, let's say, a meeting or your colleagues, teammates, your child, if your voice is of a certain tone, you can draw out answers from them and a lot of sympathy from them for, let's say, your situation. First example, let's say you ask someone, you're stuck with a problem, and you ask them, what do you think of this? In a way, you're encouraging them, you're expressing your respect for them, but in that, instead of saying, I'm stuck with this problem and what do you think about this? Do you have any solution? I have not been able to find one. Those things, you are explaining yourself too laboriously. Instead of just saying, I've been trying to find a solution, but what do you think of that? And just leave it over there. And you'll see that they will certainly, I think, be sympathetic. And if they have a solution, they'll be very open to share that with you. I want to share a few examples over here from real life. Kriyananda ji once would say that he was at an airport and traveling to some place loaded with stuff. He didn't know the upper limit for carrying the baggage till he saw the person right next to him, in front of him in the line, was, stopped, and they said, sir, you're overweight. And he just threw a fit at that time, and he said, how can call the manager, I need to talk to them, this is preposterous, do you know who I am? And on he went, and the more rigid he got, the more firm they became, and he had to in the end pay a fine. And it was, Swami says, quite a scene. But all this while Swamiji was thinking, looking at his stuff, he said, wait a minute, I have much more than what he is carrying, and he didn't even have the money to pay for it. And he says, what am I going to do? And in his mind, he just thought at that moment, he says, all these people who are serving at the counter are my best friends. And he looked at them, and you see, communication happens through your eyes, through your smile, through your voice. And he looked at them. He says, hello, how are you doing today? And they said, oh, we're wonderful, sir. And the lady was just trying to get over what happened. And she said, let's see what you've got. And he said, I have a lot of stuff on me. And she says, he just looked at her, and she just said, well, okay, this, it's fine. And she let him go without paying anything. Another time he said he was in India, and then I think in the 1950s or 60s, and he went to a government store in Connaught Place, Delhi. And the government stores, as you will know, they have a fixed price. And Swami said he liked a beautiful wood-carved statue and wanted to buy it for the temple, but it was quite expensive. At that time, he was on a monthly allowance of a monk. And he went to the counter and he said, this is a beautiful piece, I really like it. Could you please give me some discount on this? And they said, no sir, government rates, fixed price. I'm sorry. And Swami said, okay, he just looked at him. He said, come on, please make it 10%. And the person looked at Swami with his eyes wide and says, okay. And Swami says that if you connect with people in that sense, or I would say in his case, he was, very childlike, as you can make out from if you met him, if you had met him, or if you see his videos. And he says that if you have a joyful expectancy, not an expectation, oh, you ought to do this to me, for me. He said an expectancy. He says you will see that often people respond to that and they, go along with it because you can draw it. It's as if you see people are, again, matter makes us feel we are different. I remember one time he said to somebody that my way of communication, before I speak, I project a ray of light from my heart to the heart of the person. I try to imagine, he said, a ray of light from my heart to their heart. And then he says, communication or verbalizing, I verbalize my thoughts. So sweet, so considerate. One time when we were in an ashram outside of Pune, in our ashram in Vatunde, I once returned from my hospital shift and I had already received a call that one of the villagers, he was also on and off our worker on site, he was very angry. He could get very easily angry. And he said that he has blocked the road, actually by mistake, just to make the real long story short. We had a road which passed through his field in order to reach the monastery. And we had made it by mistake, but there was an understanding between him and his 3 brothers and father that we will use it, and we had offered them a monetary compensation which they had declined at different times. But whenever they would get upset, they would block the road. And this time what I was told that he's not only blocked the road for many hours, which had stopped our construction, he was sitting there wielding a knife actually. And but he was also a friend at different times to me. So I thought, oh, I'll go and talk to him. And somebody said, this time I would suggest don't. It's been a few hours and he's in the same mood. I said, but that cannot go on forever. We have to reach our monastery. But anyways, I just went up, and from a distance, he was sitting right in the middle of the road on a rock with his knife, sure enough. And he saw me come and he started looking left and right, and I was cautious also. And I looked at him from a distance and I said, hey Sunil, what's wrong? What happened today? And he said, nothing. I'm not letting anybody go from this road. And I said, that's fine. I said, I just came to meet you. I don't want to go anywhere on this road. I said, why are these things coming up? And I said, you're one of our best workers. Why this kind of... And I said, put that knife inside for heaven's sake. And he says, nobody talks to me properly. And this is my field, my road. And I said, oh yes, of course, I apologize. We apologize so many times. I understand this. I said, come, I said, what happened today? What happened? Tell me. And will you believe this? He just almost choked as he was talking. And he says, nobody treats me well. My father has never treated me well. I didn't know all these things about his life. He said, my brothers, they think I'm foolish. And they never tell me what matters they discuss about business and land and such. But today I'm going to show everybody that I am a rightful owner to this property also. And somebody, he said, in your working staff, they also spoke very harshly to me. And I said, I'm so sorry these things are happening. I said, I'm so sorry. I said, but we have never hurt. I said, we've never hurt anybody. You're all our friends. I said, please come down. I said, tell me more. And we started chatting. And after everything was resolved, I said, come, let's go and talk to the person who was harsh with you. And I went down and I met the fellow and I said, please apologize to him. I said, he's one of our best workers. And there were many other people over there and they thought that something strange might happen. And it did happen. This man, we apologized. And this man broke down in front of everybody. Started sobbing. And he said, I'm sorry I did that. I'll compensate for all the loss of hours. And he came back to work, and to this day we call upon him to work for us. That such is the power, again, of friendliness. I didn't use any mantras or something. It was just like concern. Swamiji says, inject warmth in your voice, considerateness, kindness. If he's performed a mistake, let's say, if we compound it. If we say, okay, we are going to do some legal matters, you don't know who, we know, and there are so many things. At another time, I remember, this was brought to my own notice, thankfully. I was so happy. In my own clinic, which I practiced again outside of Pune, a patient came, and this time he had some sort of neuropathic pain. He had come for the first time. He just saw the sign, walked in, and we were talking. And he said to me after a while, because you see it was complicated, he had some very serious stretch injury in the brachial plexus, what is called. And anyway, I was just listening to him and trying to pacify him, tell him that something can happen maybe. And suddenly he said, by the way, this is such a beautiful clinic you've made. And just listening to your voice, I'm not feeling any pain. All my pain has gone. But he said, I'm sure it will come back when I walk out of this clinic. And he came many times, and he would tell me many times this would happen. He said, when I'm in conversation with you, or he says at home with some friend who is very peaceful, very calm, he says, my pain goes. But then again these challenges come. So I'm again trying to make the point that our consciousness can be elevated by using our voice. And I'd like to look at a few other points I've made because this is such a fascinating subject over here. Also, I remember one time I was caught by the traffic police in Pune. I took a small wrong turn in the center of the city and I entered a one-way. And he was standing on the other side. And he had that smile, and if you know that smile they have when they catch you. And he said, come, stop here. So, what shall we do with you? What shall we do to you today? And I thought he had a lot of time. He was probably bored, and I thought this is going to be a long stretch, and I had to get somewhere. And he said, what shall we do with you today? I said, sir, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I will never do this again. And I'm a doctor, I'm also part of an ashram, but I just need to go somewhere. I said, forgive you? I said, yeah, please forgive me. I don't even have much money. He said, okay, go. So again, in that moment, I had broken a law. He was rightfully, going to charge me or something. But as a friend, I asked him and he let me go at that time. Another time I remember, see, the tone of our voice, Swamiji says, whether we are angry, it's very sharp. When sometimes you don't even need to listen to a word from someone. You are trying to explain them something and you can see the unwilling like, Or, you're about to ask somebody and they don't want to commit themselves. They're like, yeah, I'll let you know. And you just know that, okay, I might as well ask someone else for this. That the tone of the voice, a subtle tone, Swami says, just conveys a lot about our consciousness. On the other hand, Paramahansa Yogananda's foremost lady disciple, she would say, people sometimes asked her, why do you keep doing everything that, Master asks of you? And she said, it makes me happy. And she would tell the nuns, she said, when Master asks anything of you, first say yes and make it snappy and then think how to do it. Another son of a very great saint in India, he once told me, we were just interacting casually and he says, if the Guru says anything to you, say yes first. Because he says, when you say yes to what he is saying, his power is what will make it happen. And that brings us to a very high point in our topic today, that the words of a saint, the consciousness of a saint is embedded. You will probably remember the story from Autobiography of a Yogi where Paramahansa Yogananda said that a friend of Sri Yukteswarji, Ram, he passed away, was first struggling with his life and then passed away. And Sri Yukteswarji could not believe that Lahiri Mahasaya had repeatedly told him, don't worry, he'll be fine. And then he said, sir, he's dead now. And Sri Lahiri Mahasaya, after a few hours, sent with Sri Yukteswarji a few drops of oil, which when poured in Ram's mouth, brought him back. How? He says, it was not the oil, it was, I had said he will live. So the word of a guru, the word of a person who speaks truth, to that degree cannot be falsified. Words are vibration. Your body, your thoughts, our energy body are all vibrations. So when we speak the truth, when we say the right things, when we use our voice to express the highest consciousness, beneficial energy, then it has manifesting power. I also will do a small technique. This may go just 1 or 2 minutes beyond our time, so please stay with me over here. Yes, now it is said that the voice is the most powerful and the beautiful musical instrument, the voice box, in all of creation. And as a doctor, I can tell you, the voice box is just 2 inches tall. And it has 4 different nerves feeding it, 17 different muscles, external and internal. And you can multiply most of them on either side, so that makes it more than 30 around. 4 to 6 different cartilages, all of this over here to modulate our voice, and it expresses so many moods of ours. Sorry, I haven't gotten my points together here. And now friends, finally, I want to share one research that I read which is very interesting. This research was conducted in infants who are 6 to 9 months old, and they were put in a functional MRI machine, 20 of them at different times. And what was played in the background was the voice of their father expressing very harsh anger, mild anger, happiness, and a neutral tone in their voice. And those brains were studied, and these infants who don't even know what a word is, as we believe, they cannot verbalize it certainly, those parts of their brain were active, especially when high anger was expressed momentarily, which are associated with fear, anxiety, restlessness. And can you imagine if we are, now again, the gift of using your voice, your tone, to uplift other people, to induce calmness. Jyotish ji, our Dharmacharya, Swami Kriyananda ji, listen to their voices, and many other acharyas. But Jyotish ji said that he's always had that quality of calmness around him. And you can see 1 minute into his talk that the way he's using not just the information he may have, but the consciousness that he's projecting through his voice, through the chants they lead, into inducing calmness is so powerful. So I'll close with one final practice suggested by Swamiji of how to uplift our energy. He says, take any note, and let's do Om note. He says, first feel that note in your heart, which is also the chest is where we resonated. Om. Then the throat, because the voice box is here. But he says that this is the center for love. This is for peace and expansion. And this is the center for divine joy and power. So we can project the voice or the vibrations behind the voice from this point ultimately. So let's practice this 3 to 4 times and experience that. When I sing Om in the beginning, let's feel the love in the voice. Then you see my hands when I indicate at the throat to feel peace, and then joy and power at the spiritual eye. Breathe diaphragmatically, then again. One final time, feeling love in our heart. Om. Peace followed by peace, followed by peace. Om. Finally, at the spiritual eye, divine joy and power. So let's use our voices, our consciousness to project our love, our peace and expansion and joy whenever we speak. Master said, if you live with the awareness of this highest point in everything that you do, you will make very rapid spiritual progress. Thank you for joining us this evening. God bless you.